Okay, last time we saw how to add several intervals relatively quickly. Here are a couple examples. How do we multiply intervals? One way would be to add the intervals. After all, multiplication is just shorthand for repeated addition. Remember, you have to reduce all the numbers you see by 1 except for one of them when they all have the same sign. Do you notice a pattern? Let's rewrite all those sums. Let's rewrite all those sums. Do you see the pattern now? Pause the video if you need to. In order to multiply an interval by a positive whole number, multiply the length of the interval by the number and subtract a number 1 less than the number you are multiplying by. If the interval or whole number was negative, just put a negative sign in front of what you would have gotten if the interval and number had been positive. Easy peasy. Here are a couple examples. Here are the examples we started out with. And here are the other examples. Feel free to pause to study what is going on. We're following the equivalences between augmented and diminished intervals which exist on the piano, of course. In all this discussion, even if some instruments will distinguish between a diminished interval and an augmented one. But even so, restricting ourselves to the piano, we have to be careful when we choose not to care about chromaticism. As long as the operations are small, like adding two numbers or only multiplying by a small whole number, the differences between what we get and what we would get if we cared about chromaticism will remain small or non-existent. For example, a third plus a third, which is a third times 2, is a fifth in this system. But if you're talking about major thirds, but it really is an augmented fifth. Similarly, 6 major seconds is supposed to be a seventh, according to this system, but is in reality an eighth, an octave, which is an augmented seventh, of course, so it's not really wrong. Our result of a seventh isn't really wrong since, it's an augmented seventh, an octave. But 6 minor seconds isn't a seventh. It's an augmented fourth. So it is clear that a second is not exactly the same as a minor second, and that the more minor seconds you add, the further from an equivalent sum of major seconds you get. And we have to be careful with these operations, which work well enough for a small number of iterations. You can of course apply enough augmented or diminished symbols to claim any interval is equal to any other. But some would call that cheating, I think I'd be inclined to say that myself. We'll eventually explore how to add and multiply intervals when we care about chromaticism, etc. Remember, I can make mistakes. I might have messed up some calculation here or there. Let me know if you spot any mistakes. So as usual, please like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.